Welcome to episode 33 of Apply Filters. Today is a special WordSesh episode, and we're going to be talking about upgrade routines and plugins and what's new in WordPress 4.1. But first, Pippin, how about the sponsors?
Once again, this episode is sponsored by the WP Ninjas. They're developers behind Ninja Forms, as well as Ninja Demo, and several other pretty cool little plugins. They're some good friends of ours, and they've been very generous in helping us keep this thing going. This is also the first time we've ever done a video episode, so this is a little different for us. But it should be fun. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and Brad, take us away. What have you been working on?
So I'm sorry, I've got
Mute the audio from the video if you've got that going in there.
mute the audio.
Do you have the /live open up?
Oh, look at that! It went.
There we go.
It turned back on. I had it muted. Okay, now we're good. That was difficult.
All right. So what have you been working on?
Over myself talking, so it was difficult. What I've been up to. So last Friday we had a core contributor day with Delicious Brains Inc., my company. So like all the employees just spend the whole day working on core, WordPress core. And it was just pretty fun just to kind of work on.
That's for the 5 for 5, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what pushed me over the edge for sure. I'd been thinking about it before Matt put out that thing, but that kind of pushed me over the edge, and
you guys spent the time working on core as a team. What'd you guys work on for the day? Find anything interesting?
Yeah, so one of the bugs I found was interesting little bug. It was just a little performance bug. So the problem is with comments, when you list comments on the page, if there's any meta data that you're displaying, like comment metadata, it'll do a select query for that comment meta for every comment. So if there's 100 comments on the page, it'll do a select query for each one of those. And this is a bug that someone suggested be implemented 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, looks like it came from been around for a while.
Yeah, it's been around. So I kind of dug into it, and it took a while to get my head around it. I don't know, I must have spent like over an hour like trying to figure out like what I need to bring together to like the best way to bring it together and like make it happen. And if you look, we'll link up the bug in the show notes and the patch.
I'm going to drop it into the chat too for anybody who wants it.
Yeah, do that. It's super small and it's like really brief, and it's one screen.
It's funny. I was reading through that issue too. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, this is a pretty large problem. And I saw your patch, and it's tiny. Like, it's so small. It's awesome.
I know. Well, no one's reviewed it yet, so I hope it's right.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I've tested it, and it seems to work great. It cuts like all those queries down to one query, right?
That's really cool.
So instead of 100 queries, you get one query.
That's going to be a major improvement for anything that, if anybody's using plugins that add a lot of comment meta, or like review plugins, for example. Because in core by default, there's really very little metadata stored in comments.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Generally, it probably doesn't affect people unless they have that.
To test it, I had to actually make like adjustments to the default themes because they don't display any comment meta, right? So I had to actually add some in there to test. So. Well,
that's pretty cool. I hope we'll see some more progress there once a core dev gets to review it.
Yeah. What about, have you considered like dedicating a day to core?
I've been meaning to. It's been on my to-do list, for about 2 years. I tend to go through phases where 1 month, like I'll spend 2 or reviewing patches or trying to do some testing of patches, submitting. I try to do a lot with unit test. In the last couple of months, I haven't done hardly anything, but every now and then I get into a nice zone and get some done. Hoping to get back into it soon.
It's interesting to do it as a company because then you're kind of on the hook, right? Like everyone knows that it's like that day of the month and everything, and so everyone's kind of accountable to each other to make sure it happens.
I've been wanting to also get our support team involved and get into the .org support forums.
Oh yeah.
especially after major releases.
Is there like a big need for that right now, or is it?
Well, there's always going to be a need.
Yeah.
I mean, especially anytime there's a major release, no matter how solid a release is, when we're talking about millions and millions of sites, there's going to be people with problems. There's going to be people with questions, and so every additional volunteer in the forums helps.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
is there always going to be a need? Yeah, probably.
Cool, man. Well, what have you been working on in the past week?
The last couple of weeks, mostly this week, has been focused on a new version of my Restricted Content Pro plugin, which is a membership plugin. It's one of the three of the main plugins that I work on, but it's probably the smallest of the three, which would be ED and Affiliate WP. Anyway, I've been working on some big changes to it that have been really eating at me for a while that I've wanted to work on, and that is how the member data is stored in the database, and also payment integrations work with Stripe, with PayPal, etc. And so I'm doing a whole bunch of new changes, and it's actually great because it's going to lead into the main subject for this episode, which is upgrade routines in plugins. So one of the changes that I'm making in this is, for the last years that this plugin's been around, all of the information related to members, which would be things like the subscription level that they're subscribed to, their status, whether like they're active, they're canceled, they're failed, etc., their expiration date, all of these different things are all stored in user meta. Well, on a small scale, that works pretty fine. Works just fine, but when you get into really, really large sites, it can start to cause problems. So I have a site that I actually work on quite frequently that has around 500,000 users in the database, and storing that much user meta can have problems, and it's more difficult when you start trying to query that information. So one of the changes that I'm getting ready to make and that I'm working on is actually moving all of that member data to a custom table in the database, structure in the exact way that I want with the proper schema, make things a lot more efficient. I should be able to make the plugin probably 5 or 10 times more efficient than it is right now. And so this last week is kind of where I've been starting on those changes. But the fun part of that is that I then get to write an upgrade routine that goes and migrates every single user in the database to that new schema, which could be 20 users or it could be 500,000.
Right. So
lots of fun.
Right. So are you going to tackle that? I know last week we discussed the upgrade routine that I implemented, or we implemented in our Amazon plugin. Is that similar to what you have planned for this, or?
Yeah, it'll be pretty similar, at least based on what I remember from the upgrade routine that you did. The basic idea for what I'm going to do, it's actually two parts. So one part of the upgrade is simply maintaining backwards compatibility for the old schema. So if someone tries to call get user meta, and maybe they're trying to get the status or the expiration, perhaps they built a custom plugin or they've done something, and they call get user meta, I'm going to implement all the necessary hooks to maintain backwards compatibility so that when they pull that information, it still works, even though that data no longer exists in the user meta table. So that's step one. And then step two is actually moving the data from user meta to the custom table. And that will simply be a batch processing script that will go through and say do 50 or 100 users at a time, and we'll be able to continue going forever until all the users are done.
Right. So that's just going to run on a cron in the background?
To be honest, it was probably going to run at the time you install the upgrade. I mean, I could actually do it either way. I could do it on a cron, because if the backwards compatibility is there, I can probably do it in a way that it actually doesn't matter which table the information exists in. But because cron is notoriously unreliable, in WordPress, at least the WordPress cron API, I think I want to do it all at once, and so that way, if something goes wrong, the person running the site knows that there's an upgrade routine running, and that if something dies, they can say, hey, the upgrade routine died, as opposed to they were using their site and randomly all their user information is gone.
Yeah, I mean, this is like pretty important migration, right? Like, if this goes wrong, it's trouble, right?
Yeah.
What if something does go wrong? Do you have like fallback scenarios? Like, what happens like if it halfway through it forks?
My plan is to make it so that if it fails, let's say it's going through and it's going to migrate 100,000 users, and it fails at 20,000, 1,000 that have been migrated, and 80,000 that are still there. My goal is to just like put in a blocker that says, hey, we failed for some reason, use the old database until we can get the new one moved over. So no data will be deleted until we know that we have a good, the new database is complete. Because that way, at least you can revert.
Yep. Yep. I mean, that's how MigrateDB Pro works, right? Like when it does the migration, it copies the tables like separately, like with a different prefix, and then if all's good at the end, then it renames them in like one quick operation.
Right.
Well, sorry, it drops all the existing ones and then renames the ones with the prefix. So, if anything goes wrong halfway through, then you just end up with, some tables that you can easily delete in your database.
Having a little leftover data at the end is a heck of a lot better than having missing data.
Yeah.
So,
oh, yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
So that's going to be fun. That's been this whole week and will be for a while. It's kind of a slow process for me because it's not my primary focus. It's what I decide to do when I'm tired of working on other things and I want to spend 2 hours on something else.
Right. Huh. Interesting.
So how do you go about, Brad, you've done this and I've done this, but for people who have never done this, how do you start this kind of upgrade routine? How would you go about it?
Yeah, good question. I think it really depends. Do you mean like how do you start the process? Like how do you start the upgrade?
Yeah, just for an example, you can't just say, okay, here's one big SQL query, go modify 100,000 rows in the database because it will fail.
Right.
So how do you lay that process out? How do you keep it going? How do you make sure it can run for 5 hours or 20 hours or 2 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of considerations there. The first thing to decide on, I think, is whether it should automatically start, like the migration should automatically start, because like, do you want your code to have to, do you want to have to write or have code that works with the existing data, right? I mean that would be. If that's the case, then you'd have like 2 sets of code, right? One that works with the old data and one works with the new data, and then you're waiting for them to upgrade to the new data schema, and then you can use the new code. I mean, that's pretty complicated, right? Usually, you get them to upgrade the data right off the bat, like automatically.
Okay, but so once you get the upgrade started, how do you actually go through processing that upgrade? I mean, you're going to do it in a batch.
Yes.
So you have to. I mean, let's say you have 100,000 records, you're going to do 100 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that? 10,000 steps, something like that.
Yeah.
How do you go through those steps to ensure that you don't have a timeout? What would you do?
So what we do is, I know that most web requests will work for around 30 seconds, but we err on the side of caution and we say like 10 seconds, right? So what we do is we set a timer and then we run it, and then after 10 seconds we stop it, and then we do another batch after that. So we basically, it depends on like how fast your server's running and your database and all those things, and how much gets processed in a batch. That's the way we chose to do it. You can certainly do it other ways. You could do, you could just pick an arbitrary number, right? But that's a little less safe, right?
I actually really like what you say about the timer, because that's actually the issue that I ran into. So in all the ones that I've done, is I do it on a certain number. So I say I'm going to do 100 users at a time. That works really well for most people, but occasionally you get into situations where a server can only do 50 or can only do 20 for a variety of reasons. But that timers, I like that idea.
Well, the most common reason, if you want the technical server sysadmin crap, it's that. And so if you have a PHPFPM setup with Nginx usually, the set time limit function in PHP, that doesn't mean anything to PHPFPM. It doesn't obey that. PHPFPM has its own timeout setting that's like in a config file on the server somewhere, and it obeys that, and that's whatever your web host has set it to, right? Like I said, it's typically around 30 seconds, and if it exceeds that, you get those gateway timeout errors that I'm sure everyone has seen.
Super awesome.
Yeah, and so that's why I've gone with that's why I usually go with the timer now, because we learned the hard way that doing a fixed number.
You also have to be careful with like things like set timeout, because they're not always enabled on all shared hosts, which is
Right.
kind of a problem.
I don't know like why they would disable that. Like it's like
I know it fails on safe mode, which is super obnoxious.
right. Safe mode is silly though, isn't it?
It is silly. It is silly. It's actually deprecated in PHP 5.5.
Right.
Something like that.
Is it? I think yeah.
They're
I think
officially
that's right,
deprecating
yeah.
it, which makes me really happy.
I'm pretty sure we support it in MigrateDB Pro, but you get like a warning that says things may not work out here.
Nice. So I just posted a link into the chat for anybody who wants to see it. And so this is actually a really cool script that Thomas Griffin released a few days ago for doing batch upgrades. And it's basically the same process no matter what kind of batch upgrade you're doing. It's the same kind of logic. Like there's a few little nuances here and there that change. But basically it's the same thing where you're going through and doing it in batches. And so that's what I'm getting ready to do for Restrict Content Pro. Is I'm going to set up a batch processing script that will go through and move all of this customer data over. And we also just did this for Easy Digital Downloads a couple of months ago when we released a version 2.1. We introduced a brand new customer table where we moved all of our customer records from user meta to a custom table in the database, and we had to go through and migrate every single customer record. And it worked really well. We had a really small number of failures, at least that we were aware of. But so this script, the one that Thomas Griffin wrote, is very similar to what we did in EDD and what I'm going to do in our. Well, it uses a nice combination of PHP and JavaScript. Basically, like each batch is triggered by AJAX and by JavaScript. So it fires off an AJAX request that triggers a batch. Then the batch returns. There's a new, which triggers the AJAX to say, okay, we're done. Let's do it again, and it can just keep looping and looping and looping, and you don't have to worry about redirect timeouts. Because if you get a lot of servers, if you try to redirect, say 5 or 10 times, it will say, "Oh, you're going back and forth to the same page again, and I'm done. I quit." And so that helps avoid that.
So that's how MigrateDB Pro works. Actually, it uses AJAX and just does one request, gets like some kind of value back to start the next batch. To know where to leave off the next batch. And so we've tested that. That solution, I guess, quite a bit, and it's worked quite well. So, it's the way to go.
You can also do it the way that I did it first in Easy Digital Downloads was a little bit differently, where instead of when you're processing with AJAX, which is the same way that Thomas Griffin's does, it's the same way that WP MigrateDB Pro does, you actually load the page, and it's constantly showing you a progress bar, and so it sends a request, it returns a response from that request, updates the status, etc. So, but I did one a little bit differently that also worked pretty well, where it actually does reload the page over and over and over again. But what happens is you first go to the upgrades page, which then has a small JavaScript snippet on it. That JavaScript snippet triggers a redirect via the jQuery, a jQuery redirect, which goes to an action in PHP to fire. That PHP redirects back to the upgrade screen, which is essentially a success page. Then the JavaScript on that page ends up triggering the redirect again. And so you've essentially created a redirect loop that's not actually looping. It's not. I mean, it doesn't trigger the redirect loop error. But that works. That also works.
One thing we have noticed, we've noticed a little bit lately, is some servers are protecting against brute force attacks, right? Like making a bunch of requests one after the other, and if your AJAX requests like finish quickly and start and fire the next one quickly, sometimes the server will ban you.
Oh, awesome!
And so you do have to be careful of that. We're actually thinking of adding a delay. Basically, slow down your migration setting, so that if that's a problem that you're having, you can actually like add a delay between each AJAX request. So just something to watch
That's
out
pretty
for.
awesome.
So it's pretty uncommon. Like we've only got a few reports of it, like in the last 6 months or so.
It's one of those edge cases that's kind of entertaining when you run into. It's definitely, I'm sure that was a harder one to track down.
Yeah. It. Yeah. I mean, I don't even remember what the heck we did. But
cool. So we've got about 25 minutes left. So let's go ahead and jump into WordPress 4.1, and we're going to look at some of the developer changes in 4.1. If anybody has questions about upgrade routines in the database, feel free to post them in the chat, ping us on Twitter, post comments to anywhere you can find us. Happy to answer them.
Sure. So I haven't done my homework at all on WordPress 4.1.
Surely you've installed it already.
I have. I've tested like the surface, right? The toys. I played with the distraction-free editing or distraction-free writing stuff.
I will say that is really nice.
It is super cool, right? Like I mean, it just makes so much more sense that it just works, right? You don't have to go like hit a button to go to another screen and then exit out of that screen. It just kind of happens.
It's super slick. If you haven't checked that out, go take a look at it. It's one of the main features in the WordPress 4.1 release post on WordPress. David Bissett on Twitter said something pretty funny about it. He said the new distraction-free writing is so great in 4.1. Basically, my family hasn't seen me in 24 hours because I've just been writing.
Nice.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So there are a few developer-oriented changes in 4.1 that are really cool. There's a couple of minor ones, and then some that make me really, really happy. So the first one are the new title tags. Have you seen that, Brad?
I have not. What's that about?
Okay, so this one, I really like it simply because I feel like this is probably something that should have been there a long time ago because it would have saved a lot of headache in theme development. So I'm really glad that we finally have it. Basically, the title tags, which is the title that displays in your browser, is now an officially supported function in WordPress. So there's an actual function that just outputs those title tags, sets up the title tags, etc. If you have ever done theme development or you've ever looked into themes, you are probably aware that there are thousands of different ways that themes have come up with adding the title tag to their header.php files. There's so many different ways. Some work really, really well, some don't. So there's an official title. And if you want to support it in your theme, it's done through the theme support API. So you simply say add theme support title tag.
Okay, so let me think. So I've always used just WordPress SEO to manage my titles, right? So I've always had like the standard, whatever it is, WP_title or whatever,
right?
The usual one that I put in there, and that's always just worked with WordPress SEO plugin. So
right,
how is this? So how's this help me?
So the big thing is that this is also, and I hope I get this right. To be honest, I haven't dug into the source enough to know for sure on this one. But so they've introduced a number of functions along with it. For like archive titles, for example.
Okay.
That will display the title for like taxonomy archives, for post type archives, for tag archives, etc. And so what it's going to end up doing is going to create a much more consistent titles in themes. So instead of each theme coming up with their own way, like if you've ever seen a lot of themes will do this. I know my current theme does. It has a function that hooks into I think WPTitle is the filter, and it goes through all these conditionals, and it says if is tag, do a title like this. If is post type, do a title like this. If is taxonomy, do this, do this, do this. And so this is going to help get rid of all of that fluff.
Okay, gotcha.
Along with those, they've also introduced new template functions for like post navigation, which is get the post navigation, and post plural, which will be awesome for official pagination, which will be nice. Because pagination is another thing that's been done in so many different ways in tons of different themes and plugins, etc. And so this is just going to create a little bit more consistency for it.
Yeah, it sounds
sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
What's next? Complex queries. Yeah, This looks pretty cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. So I'm going to post a link to this in the chat for anybody who wants to read up onto it. This is a major shout out to Boone Gorges because he is a madman that has done amazing things. So first of all, this is amazing.
And that's coming from Pippin. I mean,
hey, I can't even touch this stuff. This stuff's nuts. So in 4.1, Boone introduced I think 250 plus new unit tests, which is awesome, related around specifically around queries. But there's three major changes to queries that are pretty awesome, or three different types of queries that are changing. So we have WP date queries, WP meta query. All of these are the main query classes that can be used for querying complex data from the database. So if you want to find a list of posts that have a particular piece of post meta, you can use that. If you want to find posts that are within a particular date range or match a specific date or after a specific date, you're using a date query, even if you don't realize it. If you want to query posts that are related to a specific taxonomy in a post category, in a post tag, and in some custom taxonomy you've registered, then you're using a tax query. Well, and so what these have all supported for a while, the ability to say have like and or statements. So let's say related to geolocation. So we're going to store a city, we're going to store a zip code, and we're going to store a state. So for one particular post, you might say we have the city is Miami and the state is Florida. And then in another one, you have the city is Augusta and the state is, I have no idea where Augusta is. I think there's an Augusta, Florida. But anyway, so you have, and so for a long time you've been able to say, okay, give me all posts that are in Florida or are in Kansas. Or you could change it so you can say, give me all posts that are in Florida and have a city of this. So you can have and or statements. Well, now what you can do is you can have nested statements. So you can say, I want all posts that are in Miami or are in Ohio and, sorry, so I have that backwards. You can say, I want all posts that have a city of Miami and a state of Ohio and all posts that have a city of Augusta and a state of Maine. So what you can do is now you can have basically a big or statement, so it matches this one or this one, and then inside of each one of those you can have an and statement. So you can say this city and this state, this city and this state. And so anything that matches this bubble or this, and so you can do that with meta queries, tax queries, and date queries.
Yeah. Just check out the link in the show notes or in the chat, because it's like there's a little snippet of code here and it's like super clear that it's
a lot easier to read than it is to explain.
Definitely. But yeah, it takes about 3 seconds to realize, oh, this is cool. You can nest these relationships. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Apparently I'm having some problems with my video freezing, so anybody who's seeing that.
What are you gonna do?
What can I do? Then there was one other big change to complex queries that's pretty cool, which is related to WP comment query. Comments have had a technically support for custom comment types for a long time. So you could have a pingback comment, a trackback comment, or a standard, just like blog post comment. And it used to be a little tricky if you wanted to say query them by a specific type. Now it's a lot simpler to do that. So there's a lot better support for custom comment types. And then there's also some additional parameters that they've added allow you to say, I want all comments except for those that are in this list of IDs, or I want all comments that match this list of post IDs. So let's say you have 50 posts and you need to go get all of the comments related to those posts. You can easily do that now.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Sweet. Definitely a nice change.
Huh. I wonder if you're going to start to see like people using comments and comment meta more for other things, right? That satisfy that data structure. I've seen a few examples. I know WooCommerce uses them for order notes. So
they use them for order notes, and I believe they also use them for product reviews.
Oh,
I may be wrong on the product reviews.
Yeah. Do you guys use them in EDD?
We do. We use them for payment notes, and we have an extension that does it for product reviews.
Cool. How's that worked out? Is there issues with it, or?
Well, yeah, there's some pain points, which is one of the reasons why these changes to comment query make me really, really happy. So if, for example, right now, if you want to, let's say you register a custom comment type, which you don't actually register it, you just include it into the args when you store it into the database. But if you do that, it's automatically going to be displayed along with other comments. So if you have a recent comments widget in your sidebar or on your dashboard, those comment types are going to be included. Well, if you're storing notes on, oh, Mike Jolly in the chat did just say product reviews are comments. So
there you go. Confirmed.
Yes. But if you have these notes that you're storing on order data in the comments, those might contain more private information, maybe things like transaction IDs or maybe private notes left by a store admin or something like that. And you really don't want them to be publicly available. Especially think about like RSS feeds. You definitely don't want them showing up in RSS feeds for comments. Or with the new JSON API coming, you don't want them to be publicly available there. And so if you want to exclude those right now, you have to do some kind of nasty stuff. You have to alter some database queries and say, don't touch these ones if we have a payment node of EDD payment or anything like that.
Oh, right. So you're probably hooking into like the posts where _where filter.
Yeah, we do posts where, comments where,
Yikes.
and I think there's 3 that you have to do if you want to exclude them from all defaults, which is kind of annoying. So in 4.1, there's better support for just excluding those by default. And I think, I'm not sure if this actually went in or not, but this was proposed in a ticket that core should only display default types. So it will only ever display comments, pingbacks, and trackbacks. And so if you have a custom comment type, it'll just be hidden by default unless a plugin enables it.
Cool.
I don't remember if that actually got in or not, but it was definitely proposed.
So next feature 4.1 is logout everywhere. So I don't really know what that is, but let me guess. So you log out of WordPress, it logs you out of every account that you're logged into on the internet. Is that?
No. No, it's actually
that might be
totally
a bug.
different. that might be a problem. So this is kind of cool, and I think I'm going to see if I can actually pull this up real quick and do it local. If I can replicate this real quick, I might share my screen out. I'm going to fail though. Okay, I'll just tell you what it is. So what it is the ability to it's like session management. So when you are logged into your user account on a site, that's your session on that site. And let's say that you then leave that computer, you go to your laptop, and you log in again. You now have 2 different sessions logged into that site. Well, now what you can do is it will actually tell you if you're logged in somewhere else, and you can say, kill all other sessions. That belong to me. And so it's just a little button on your profile page. If you go to like your profile in the WordPress admin and you're logged in somewhere else, it will say log out other sessions. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think it shows at all times. So I can click it and it just lets me do it, which is pretty cool. So it logs you out everywhere else.
This is a new UI change, right?
Yeah, it's a new UI change.
Okay.
Here's an example of where it's really cool, where it's great. Let's say you go to a coffee shop and you use a public computer.
Yeah.
And you leave yourself logged in and you forget about it. And then you realize 2 hours later, crap, I was logged into my site. And I don't want someone to do that. So you simply log in again, you go there and you click log out, and you'll be logged out on the other computer. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nice feature for sure. I noticed this must have been like incremental improvement in 4.0 too, because we've noticed with MigrateDB Pro now when someone migrates the user meta table, it logs them out if they're logged in on the other side. So there's a new
it was a new class they implemented called WP Sessions, I think.
Yeah. And there's new data that they put into the user meta table that has session information where you can, if you remove that record in that table, it'll log you out everywhere. I think that you could have done this previously by editing the database, but there
was no UI for it.
There was just no UI.
Right.
For
so
it,
the API that powers it was in 4.0, I believe, and now the UI is in 4.1.
Yeah. So.
Cool. What else is new here?
So, you got to tell me about plugin recommendations. It sounds really cool. Have you looked into it?
I have a little bit. I follow the track ticket on it, so it's pretty cool. What it does, now WordPress.org is constantly aggregating data and keeping track of what plugins are frequently used together. So if you have plugins on your site and you then go to add a new plugin, it's actually going to look at those plugins and say, okay, these are the other plugins that people use with the plugins that you have installed frequently. So where this gets really cool, a while for this to pop up, just because I'm not sure how long the data has been aggregating. But let's say that you're using an e-commerce plugin, whether it's EDD or WooCommerce or JiggleShop or anything like that, and you have and there's free extensions to that plugin in the .org repository, and you go click Add New and go to Search, and you'll be able to go find extensions a lot more easily that are directly related to that core plugin because they're frequently installed together.
Right.
Which would be kind of cool. So I haven't played with it enough to kind of see how good the recommendations are. Like, I have it open right now, and
probably I'm going to guess it's not Amazon quality yet. That would be pretty impressive, though.
But okay, so here's a quick shout out that worked well apparently. So I have Affiliate WP installed, which is my affiliate plugin.
Yeah.
And I go to recommendations, and 2 of the free affiliate WP add-ons that are in the repository show up.
Nice.
So there we go.
Pretty cool. Do you have any idea like how they're doing it on the back end?
I don't. I haven't seen the API for it.
Mystery black box.
Yeah, I don't know if like when you install a plugin, if it sends a query that says, "Hey, here's all the plugins I have," but I'm sure that you could dig into the core installation API and figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What else
There's
we
a couple of other things that are new in 4.1 that are pretty nifty.
Yeah.
Customer API. Customizer API.
Customizer API, yeah. I tend to ignore these things because they're like theme related. I don't do a lot of work with themes, so I just like.
I like to pay attention, and I don't usually play with them as much. But the Customer API does have a cool feature in it now that allows you to conditionally show or hide sections and panels based upon the page that you're previewing. So let's say that you have settings in the customizer, for your theme, and now this can apply to plugins as well. So this is pretty cool because you can build settings pages for your plugins.
Oh,
haven't really done, but I've seen people that have done it really well. But let's say that you are previewing the homepage in the customizer, and so then you have settings that only apply to the homepage. So you can show those settings in the customizer. Then you navigate over and show a static page somewhere else, or something else, some other page on your site, where those settings related to the homepage really don't apply anymore, and so you can hide them by default. So the API now supports that. So it'll create really a lot better settings panels for the customizer that are much easier to navigate for the user because they're only seeing stuff that actually applies to them right there.
Cool.
So instead of screen, you have a live version of what applies to what you're seeing right now, which can be very cool.
Oh, that is neat. Well, then I think I'll have to take a closer look at that now that I know that it applies to plugins.
Definitely. I've been wanting to build a settings screen and a plugin for it just to do it. I haven't really had a reason to yet because I haven't had a plugin that needs it, but I would like to.
Yeah. So, and then of course 2015 has been released with 4.1 as well. So the new.
I like 2015 a lot. It is a pretty theme. There is one thing that I kind of like and dislike at the same time about it. So first of all, the theme itself is beautiful. It requires WordPress 4.1. Because of the new template tag functions that they've introduced. And so one great thing about that is that it's taking that movement, encouraging people to upgrade and helping be the, I don't know, I guess be the model to say, hey, let's do it this way, which is great. I don't know if I would prefer that they would have done some backwards compatibility so that someone on 4.0 could still use it. I don't know. In some ways, that's almost like making a concession and saying, okay, well, whatever.
Come on, man! It's 2015. Get with the program. That's what they're saying, right?
I do. So 2015 is a vertical theme. So the sidebar, I mean, all the menus and stuff are now on the left or the right side. There is no top menu, and it's a nice layout. It's really clean.
Yeah, I like it. You know, one thing I found, I was when I was doing the core dev, I was using 2015 to work on that the comment performance bug, and I was using Query Monitor, right? Yep. and Query Monitor spits out like a panel that shows like all the queries and how long they take to run and all that stuff. And I was using that, and you know the bar, like the fixed panel on the left in this theme. Yeah, it overlays it.
Oops. Well.
I had to switch to 2014.
Isn't Query Monitor written by John Blackburn?
It is, ironically.
Well, I imagine that will probably get fixed up pretty soon. Then John Blackburn, for anybody who doesn't know, was the lead for WordPress 4.1.
Yeah, so that is a sweet plugin, though, man. That's really the first time
I use that plugin all the time. It's been amazing for me. One of the reasons I like 2015 for so much is because it's the closest to 2012, and 2012 is my favorite theme that's ever been released for standard theme. Because it's so clean, it's so easy to it's a perfect development theme for plugins. Because it doesn't have a lot of styles, there's no flashiness to it. It's just great for doing development. And 2015 is the same way.
Oh well, I think
in 2013.
I think we're about close to out of time here.
We're getting super close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2015 so far. So we're pretty much out of time. Anybody? Let's see. Where are these questions? I gotta find them.
Wait, what? Oh, in this chat? In the chat notes?
Brad just gave us a note that says we got a couple of questions in the chat room. I gotta find them.
Oh no! It's like it's a heap or a stack.
There we go. Oh, nope. Okay, well, if anybody has a question, go ahead and post it right now in the chat room, and we will see what we can do to answer it. We have 5 minutes left. Questions. There we go. See if we got anything. Query Monitor is. If you're a developer and you're not using Query Monitor. Question: do you keep upgrade routines in core forever, or leave them forever?
That's a good question.
Leave them forever. One of my favorite features in WordPress core is that you can install version 1 point something and it will upgrade to 4.1 flawlessly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I don't know. A part of me wants to get it out of there at some point, just for the OCD part of me, right?
I think it's the same question. Do you deprecate? So if you deprecate a function, do you eventually remove that function completely? Yeah. So there's good arguments for both.
Yeah.
Next one.
I think upgrade routines can probably stay in forever.
Yeah, I would usually keep them in. Brad, why don't you answer this one? Might have missed context. Using Ajax or an upgrade routine would be great, except it would break in WP CLI.
Ooh. Yes. Good point.
Any upgrade routine would break in CLI if it does redirects.
Well, if you code it right and you abstract your code enough and separate the Ajax from the functions that are handling things, you can still use the CLI. The CLI can still fire off remote requests to an Ajax endpoint.
True.
Right? So that's what we do for MigrateDB Pro. We have the CLI add-on. And that's what it does.
I'll have to look at your code for that because I'll be honest, off the top of my head, I can't even think of how to do that.
Well, see, the thing about our a CLI add-on, it's our first version, so don't expect too much. we definitely need to. We kind of shoehorned it in there, and we could definitely clean that up. So keep that in mind.
Where'd you get your glasses?
Oh, MSNBC.
Nice.
No, Warby Parker. If that's a serious question, or
that answer actually doesn't mean anything to me. I have no idea what that is.
Okay, we're at warbyparker.com. You can order glasses, and you can order a bunch and try them on, and then send them back for free. So,
cool.
and then they'll send you the frames without the lenses, and you try them on, see if they work for you, and then send them.
Oh, nice.
Back.
Okay, I have heard of services like that. I just haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Not optometrists, but the people that fit people for glasses. Optician. Oh, they hate Warby Parker because it's killing their job, man.
I bet.
Yeah.
So there's a couple other questions left in the chat, but we are out of time. So if you would like to get your question answered, feel free. I might stick around in the chat for a little bit. I've got another session coming up here in a couple of hours for the Plugin Roundtable. You can also ping us on Twitter. Brad, how do they find you?
At Brad T on Twitter, and you?
At Pippin's Plugins. So everybody, thanks for chiming in.
Thanks, everybody.
Enjoy the rest of WordSesh.